Good afternoon. I'm Staff Sergeant Quinn Jakes of the Calgary Police Service Guns and Gangs Unit. The Calgary Police Service has arrested and charged 2 men believed to be responsible for supplying firearms that were used during a series of shootings in January and February of 2015 in Northeast Calgary. The Guns and Gangs Unit initially investigated the shootings, but also began a parallel investigation to identify and stop the source of the firearms. Our investigation revealed that Eric Michael HEBERT, 33 of Calgary, was the alleged source of at least 2 handguns that were recovered from organized crime associates and used in at least 2 drive-by style shootings in Northeast Calgary. On Tuesday, May 5th, 2015, a warrant was executed at a residence in the 1700 block at 28th Street Southwest. 2 handguns, 2 rifles, a shotgun, and a variety of illicit drugs were seized from the residence. HEBERT is charged with 11 counts of trafficking firearms. David Robert AEICHELE, 33 of Calgary, is charged with 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance, 2 counts of careless storage of a firearm, as well as 7 counts of possession of a weapon contrary to a prohibition order. This investigation is continuing and more charges are anticipated. That concludes the prepared portion of my presentation today, so I can take any questions that you may have.
So what shootings are they connected to?
So there was one on January 1st. It was at a drive-by style shooting into a residence in the community of Rundle. The second shooting was on February 14th. It was a drive-by shooting into a vehicle in the community of Marlborough.
And how close are you to solving the shootings?
Those 2 investigations are still active, so it's going to be some time before charges are laid in those 2 incidents.
So these people that were arrested, they supplied the guns that were in the shootings?
Correct.
How did you know that they were the ones that did that? Like, where did you get the weapons?
So the weapons were obtained, we believe that the weapons were obtained lawfully and then converted to an illicit purpose. So in other words, they were purchased in accordance with regulations and then sold or trafficked to persons who used them ultimately in a violent crime.
And so it's been months since these happened, so what led you to these people?
The names came up, the names I've provided with you came up in our investigation, and it took some time for our investigators to gather enough evidence to lay charges. It took us time to get evidence to apply for a search warrant to search the home on 28th Street and then ultimately lay charges as a result of the search.
Have they been cooperative?
You know what, they've been cooperative, yes.
Are you considering, working with the Crown on immunity deals for, people who might lead you to the shooters?
No, not at all.
And do you have any leads on these suspects?
Those investigations are independent of this gun trafficking investigation, so those investigations are still ongoing, and I hope to bring good news and conclusion to those in the months coming.
Do you suspect these individuals were up to this kind of thing for some time, or was it relatively recent?
I don't know, to be honest. It's difficult for us to offer any commentary on that. Our information suggests that these guns were likely trafficked within the past year.
Are these 2 known to police?
No, certainly not to Calgary Police.
So at least one of them has connections to Vancouver. Is there some kind of organized crime thing that you can tell us about where there's a connection between Alberta and these?
There's no links that I'm aware of.
Were these weapons or rifles and handguns, were they purchased in Canada?
Yes, they were lawfully acquired in Canada.
How significant is it? Can you just sort of speak to how big a deal is it to get these off the streets?
Well, I can speak to, overall I have a concern about the uptick in gun violence in Calgary. So it's important to us to look at who's acquiring firearms and who's providing them and trafficking them to criminals. Because I know that those firearms, they're not meant to be collected. They're not valuable firearms or significant in any way. They're simply acquired for the use of the commission of an offense. These drive-by style shootings are meant to intimidate people and ultimately can cause harm. So for us to lay charges on the trafficking side is significant for us.
Can you speak to the relationship between these 2 guys? Were they roommates, friends?
They were residing within the residence, or were located within the residence at the same time.
Do they both live there?
I'm not sure.
Is it a relatively small amount of people that have the ability to, change those weapons from a legal to an illegal or an automatic, semi-automatic type of?
I think really, if anyone wants to be engage in criminality, they can. They can lawfully acquire a firearm and then illegally sell it to someone.
But this isn't like 2 of 12 groups of people in the city that do this, or 2 of 100 people that
You know, I don't have personally have comfort about how many people in our community are doing this, to be honest.
Can you speak about the guns that were seized? I mean, are these fairly common for the streets, rare? And
These types of guns are fairly common. They're lower quality. They're designed to be used in an offense, and if the criminals have to take flight or discard evidence, then these are essentially throwaway guns. That's how I would care.
These legally in Calgary, or you said they were purchased in Canada? You know, where in Canada?
Yes, these can be obtained anywhere with a possession acquisition license.
Okay.
So essentially, a big problem is they're selling guns that are just a few moves away from making them assault rifles, or, you know, like you said, crime, you know, popular in the crime world. Like you said, they're not used for anything else. So that one step is the only thing missing. So you're trying to get them off the streets, period. Is that the idea? Or?
That's the idea. We're focusing on the guns as a commodity, much like drug investigators focus on drugs, or we're shifting our focus to drugs as the commodity, because I'm convinced that there's a secondary market for lawfully acquiring the firearms and then selling them for legitimate purposes.
When you said more charges are pending, can you expand on who, what, if it's, you know, more firearms charges?
It'll be more firearms charges, and at this point I can't speculate, you know, who or when or.
But I mean, is it against these 2, or are there other individuals that you believe to be involved?
We're looking at the possibility there's other individuals involved.
If somebody sells these guns to criminals who commit a crime, what kind of charges can they face, and like what kind of time would they do?
Well, that's a good question. April 14th, the Supreme Court of Canada actually overturned a decision about the minimum sentencing law that was on the books. So I think we're just sort of in a bit of a vacuum to see what type of sentencing is going to come out as a result of these types of offenses.
Is it hard for the criminals to find guns?
I don't think so. As long as they have the cash to purchase, then I think then they have, assuming they have the connections, I think they're relatively obtainable.
I'm sorry, I remember the January 1st one, but February 14th, were there any victims, or was the car just shot up?
The car was just shot up. It was unoccupied.
That wasn't one by the co-op gas station?
No, this was in the community of Marlborough. Not the 52nd Street shooting you're thinking of. So, and I don't want to dismiss in any way that these are property offenses, because they're not. These are, in some cases, millimeters away from being homicides. It's just trajectory of the round, and so it's serious. It's very serious.
And we've seen that in the past, where bullets fly into houses of people who are not connected to the person who's the target, sometimes striking a few feet from a child sleeping.
Yeah, and those are you know, concerns of mine as well. So people that are relatively untrained and have an agenda to injure someone, it's very concerning to discharge a weapon in a public place like that. So, all right.
Did the 2 men actually buy the guns legally, or somebody else bought them, the men bought them from them, and then provided them?
Our investigation is suggesting that these gentlemen acquired the firearms and then sold them on a secondary market basis to criminals.
So they got them legally?
Yes, that's correct.
So can you comment at all between your suspected relationship between the people who are doing the shootings and those who are being shot at? Is this some kind of turf war for drugs, or what is this about?
You know, that's a lengthy discussion. So I can tell you that it ranges from my experience, drug disputes to turf issues, if you will. So really, they're all in. There's not one theme in these things. They're multi-layered. The more we look into them, it could be disrespect at a nightclub that results in a shooting 6 months later, or it could be over drug territory. It depends.
In these specific instances, do you have any ideas of the links between the shooters and the shooters?
No, not a firm handle on it, no.
So you don't know exactly what kind of message was trying to be sent?
Intimidation of some sort, but for what reason, I don't know.
Just one thing on that changes, the Supreme Court changes. So does that mean that they struck down a law that had tougher sentences for these crimes, and you're waiting to see what comes out of that?
Correct. Yeah, there was minimum sentencing guidelines provided, and the Supreme Court has struck that down. And I think that decision was a 3-6 decision. Actually, I have it right here if you bear with me. 6-3 ruling that came out April 14th. So I'm kind of watching that to find out what the direction the federal government's going to take, if any.
And as far as fighting these crimes and the people who commit these crimes, does that hinder what you guys are trying to do?
My job is to enforce the law and let the politicians and the courts administer it.